Hello and welcome to Kongkast. Today is February 1st, 2944. I'm going to be your host, Kalis, and I have my co-host here, Boojum.
Good to be here.
This is where we discuss Star Citizen and worship at the altar of Chris Roberts. We have a little bit of catch-up today since our last holiday hiatus, so let's begin. And joining us today will be Alex Wolf.
Hello, I'm Alex Wolf, and I know nothing about Star Citizen.
Bill the Turnup.
Hello.
Kippeth.
Hello, I'm Kippeth, the Kong's token Kiwi.
And Molasses Fats.
Hi.
Well, when we last left off the last cast, we were talking about the different stretch goals, and we have a few to catch up on. The first one is the $37 million goal, which is the Stellar Graveyard, and that was completed. Now, I'm not going to read all the information about it, but basically, it is a no man's zone. It doesn't look like there's much there other than a collapsed white dwarf and a planet that's in deep. Yeah. Does anybody have any interesting insight on it, or questions, or anything like that? Alex.
So, it seems that the new planets are all some sort of dead worlds or microbe worlds or something like that, and I'm kind of curious, how is this interesting at all? I mean, let's see. It's a planet that's completely dead, no atmosphere. It's just a piece of rock. What are you supposed to do there? Mining, like in Mass Effect 2? Because there won't be aliens, there won't be nature to behold. There may be some exploring of like rocks and caves and storms or whatever you get on such a planet, but no civilizations. I mean, I understand that celestial bodies do exist, but are we supposed to be excited about it?
Well, this is what the community voted on, and I think there was a miscommunication, or rather misunderstanding, of what a stellar graveyard is. I believe that most people thought it was a ship's graveyard, and voted accordingly. Laser, did you have some insight on that?
I'm sure that people thought that it would be a spaceship graveyard instead of just a star that's transformed from whatever phase of life it was in to a planetary nebula and a white dwarf, which is slowly cooling over billions of years.
We also know that there are two worlds in there, but they're basically dead and they have no atmosphere, so they're only probably good for mining bait or something along those lines, since I doubt they could support any colonies with that. Well, maybe with some terraforming, who knows, or at least bubble cities or something along those lines. Bill.
One of the interesting things that I'd like to see is if they're intentionally leaving aspects and details out of these descriptions for exploration, because it does seem like they're leaving a lot there that we can possibly go into, like with the water covered planet. They only said that there's small life, but there could be bigger life out there, and I think that they might be doing that for exploration, but I'd really like to get some definitive stuff on that.
I would like more information too, but right now looks like they only wrote the fiction for something they probably plan to have in there anyway. Molasses, what'd you have to say about the Stellar Graveyard?
Oh, is it just about the Stellar Graveyard? Like just
As of
only that?
currently, yes. We're still talking about that.
I think it probably could have been worded better, because like just at a glance, most people when they hear Stellar Graveyard, when you hear graveyard in like any kind of space or naval game, you usually think it's some kind of ship graveyard, and it's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think there was a misunderstanding by the player base, which we've kind of seen before, and we'll get into that a little bit later with some of the other voting of that.
Just generally.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, before we move on, I think that's been a general facet of these recent stretch goals, is that they have very short 2 or 3 word titles and no description, and it's very vague what they actually mean. So there's been a lot of confusion going around about what they are actually voting for.
Yeah, and I feel like they do that on purpose, though, just to make sure that they're not like confined to like a specific thing when people vote for it, so they have some breathing room for development.
It probably helps to keep it vague, so like you said, they'll have the ability to be creative with it. But yeah, they are using astronomical terms that a lot of people may not be familiar with, like stellar graveyard, for example. And Kibith, you had something to say?
Yeah, on the upside of something, I mean, just having to put an upside on it, having a neutron star in a system, you end up with very, very high density. So you could have some real nice sort of mining bait, as you said there, even though the system isn't exactly the most amazing for things like combat or other civilizations.
That's a good point. It did say that the inner planets were there, so there might just be little pieces of them left if there are anything left at all.
Laser Angel, you had something?
Yeah, I noticed that Kip mentioned neutron star. I'm not sure if this location. I'm reading the notes right now, but it mentioned a white dwarf. But when he mentioned neutron star and mining, the thing that came to mind was just exotic matter. There can be strange locations where there are extremely rare supernova remnant matter that hasn't been encountered before, that you could sort of throw a science fiction-y spin onto it instead of a hard science.
One interesting thing they have told us in the past was they mentioned that there was going to be rare minerals and materials of some sort that might let you make one-off weapons that would be, well, rare, legendaries, or something along those lines. And maybe that's where this stuff is going to come in, these interesting places, stuff like this, where it'll probably be very dangerous, probably, really it's obviously not going to be secured space, so who knows what you're going to find there. All right, so next we have the 38 million goal. It is currently in progress, and that's the fully aquatic planet. I wasn't really big on this one, since we don't have any real planet exploration at this time, but it does sound interesting in the fiction. Alex, you had something to say about it?
When I read about said aquatic planet, I wasn't very impressed because it seemed like another almost dead world, because a planet full of mostly dead water isn't much better than a planet full of mostly dead rock when it comes to potential for stories. But then it seems that there is some kind of closed colony there and some kind of law disputes, and all this stuff can get well, I'm not saying that there's a potential for adventure there, but certainly there may be some corporations do something. It has some potential, but still, I would prefer a little bit more life there.
Okay, well, I do agree. The fiction makes it sound kind of interesting. Apparently, there are people there. They've been there for 300 years, so it will probably be some sort of hub world.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that this one got voted so high up in the order. And it seems like everyone was really disappointed that there isn't a whole lot of life underwater. But my question is how did people plan on exploring this underwater world in a spaceship? I don't think any of the ships we have are submersible. So I just thought it was kind of a boring choice to begin with, because how are you going to explore the ground? Let's just maybe if it was really shallow, you could see coral reefs and stuff from a flyby, but other than that, it's just going to be blue.
Just in general, I think that people have been focusing too much on planetary exploration. We know that at least early in the game's life after release, there's not going to be a whole lot of space to explore planetside. They just don't have the time to build out hundreds of these locations very extensively. I was surprised to find people actually thought they were going to go submarine diving into spaceships. It's a little silly.
Maybe they thought that the port would be something like Rapture from BioShock, where they'd land and then the city would be underwater. But that's not what jumped to my mind when I saw it on the list. I was like, oh, a water planet. That's less interesting than some of these other choices that at least might have interesting skyboxes, like the stellar graveyard we were talking about. It's in a nebula. At least when you're flying through it, it might look a lot prettier than a system that contains just a blue planet.
Well, we know you'll be able to land on it for sure. There's a single archaeology right now, so that'll be the only place we can actually go in. Bill, go
On
ahead.
ice, yeah.
Yeah, something to think about is that we already do have the what is it, the buggy? So, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities for them to create some sort of submersible to go around on the underwater planet.
It's certainly possible. I mean, the engine, I'm certain would support it, but whether or not they're going to make that their focus, I think it's taking away a little bit too much from the focus of what the game should be. I mean,
Exactly.
I see them focusing on two things: the FPS combat and the flying around. I mean, maybe a little bit of the socialization aspect, but I think those two are going to be the main draw. Alex, you had something to say?
Like you said, Kalos, it's all about what this game is aiming to be. Because I assume that many people played Knights of the Old Republic, for example, and there is an aquatic planet there with a single big city available to strangers. And the thing is that you walk around the city, you talk to people, but the question is, can you do the same in Star Citizen? Maybe people have flight packs of Manan and they're like, oh, I want Manan in Star Citizen, why not? But the thing is, can you really walk around the city? Can you talk to people in Star Citizen? Will it be like, how big will the RPG/adventure elements, will they even be present? Or will it be just a port to land that's blue outside?
That's actually a really good point. One of the things I think there's a misconception about what Star Citizen is, because everybody seems to have their own dream of what Star Citizen is, and we've been told pretty clearly some concepts that don't seem to communicate well to the player base. Where a lot of people seem to feel that this is going to be Eve 2.0, or it's possibly going to be Second Life Space Citizen. I mean. We know it's not going to be these things. Maybe in modding later on, we might, but I don't know. Molasses, you had something to say?
Yeah, I think with all these planets that you vote for, what you should be thinking about is like, what kind of spaceport do I want to look at when I land here? Because that's pretty much what you're going to be seeing. Like, you'll be able to see the planet from space, and that's going to be cool. But it's more about like when you land your ship, what's it going to look like? And it'll probably be really pretty. Like Manan in KOTOR. It was a really pretty looking city. It got this like modern floating paradisey thing, like this huge expansive ocean to look at. But other than that, I don't think they'll be able to do much. At least at launch.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. Laser.
Oh, yeah, I think since we've already covered this, at launch it might just be a landing pad, your hangar, a small city area, shops, and a few, maybe some interesting landmarks. But I think what I thought when Bill mentioned a submersible or the buggy, and I immediately thought of the gladiator picture, where you see I think it's two gladiators and they're flying over a desert planet, and you see some highways and interstate in the background. It's like, wow, it would be interesting to drive that, even though it's not really something that would be part of the game necessarily. And I can imagine certain aspects of that being expanded upon, but as you mentioned, it isn't Second Life Citizen. There's no reason for me to be driving around this piece of road in the middle of a desert to go to another city when I can just fly there in my spaceship or whatever.
Well, when they were in Germany, Chris mentioned some people were asking about tanks and ground warfare and such, and I got the impression that maybe in time he was interested in implementing something like that. But of course, he has to, get the original thing off the ground. I mean, he intends to do Star Citizen for a very long time, so we'll see where that goes. Phoenix.
Yeah, talking about Knights of the Old Republic, if you take a look at that video they showed off of, I think, Terra, it seems like the landing zones are going to be really similar to those hub locations. It won't have like the adventure sites that you leave the port to go, because we're supposed to be doing our adventuring in space. But as far as like being able to go around and talk to people, buy stuff from shops, get the news from maybe NPC news hawks or whatever, like I think Knights of the Republic is a good basis for like hub cities.
Yeah, just a little quest hub and a place to buy stuff and maybe acquire different goods depending on where you're located. Kippet.
I think a lot of this is a lot of the voting is heavily affected by what happens in like media and stuff. When you look at people go, oh well, you said like Second Life. Well, you had the Mass Effect series that was really popular, that had the whole walking around the station and getting to go to these exotic planets, and I think that's what people are sort of somewhat expecting because it's such a popular thing. And then you look at when the people who are expecting like a ship graveyard, well, it's because what they had in Mass Effect, and a lot of people are getting into this from Mass Effect and other really common bits of media.
Just in general, I think that people are drawing a lot of expectations from other games that they imagine Star Citizen will be like. But in that vein, we can actually draw from games that were made by the same people doing the design. You know, if you look at Freelancer and Privateer, they all had small landing locations with several very functional areas. One where you could get information, one where you could get ships, one you could buy and sell stuff, that kind of thing. And I don't expect much more than that at launch. Though there's a lot of stuff on the "we'll do it eventually" list, kind of a very long-term development thing.
All right, excellent. So next we have the 39 million in progress vote that actually won. It's the Unexplored Natural Wonder. Now, this is pretty interesting as far, from a astrophysics perspective, a trinary, which are not supposed to be very common, and it looks like it'll be really pretty. I don't know exactly what it's going to offer us other than a cool-looking thing, because I know we're not going to be getting close to planets or stars, like, from the engine perspective.
One thing I found very interesting from the description is that they almost explicitly say that it's undiscovered as far as jump points go, that it's only been seen on telescopes, and that they think there must be a jump point somewhere.
They're not going to tell us where this stuff is, so these are all, well, I mean, it is an unexplored natural wonder by virtue of its name alone. Bill, you had something to say about the unexplored natural wonder?
Oh, I was going to talk about the those trinary star system. Don't we have hydrogen scoops? So wouldn't it probably be more effective to use hydrogen scoops in a trinary system?
It's possible. We're supposed to be able to maybe eventually get fuel from gas giants as well as just background hydrogen. I'm not sure. They said that you're never really going to run out of fuel, but I don't know. We're unclear as to how those systems are going to work yet.
Yeah, it was my understanding. Fuel mechanic, like you said, comes from gas giants and then from just passive collection from space. And we don't know how that'll all pan out, but as far as I've understood, that'll be, the mechanic for fuel at launch.
Alex, you had something to say about the trinary system?
Well, I know I already sound pretty negative on this podcast, but pretty skyboxes are a dime a dozen. You see them once, you go wow, and then you go about your business. Please, people making Star Citizen, Mr. Roberts, please throw us a bone and tell us what exploration will be all about. What is there to do?
Well, we know a little bit about it. We know that jump point finding and plotting new jump points is going to be a really big deal and also dangerous. But a large number of the client base was interested in exploration, more than Chris Roberts thought. He thought that most people would be interested in shooting other people, but exploration was a big deal. So I'm sure they're kind of switching things and switching gears to add more, like that one stretch goal where they're going to add in the new race, or rather the dead race, and learning about that, as well as we're going to see alien abandoned space stations. I'm sure we're going to have derelicts, and they even have a specialist, an explorer.
And for this system in particular, they even tease about there possibly being planets and such. For some of these, I'm holding it close to the chest with specifics. But generally, I think that there is also a lot of demand for exploration, and they're still trying to figure out all of the ways they can fulfill that demand.
Yes, what I mean to say is, I don't doubt that there will be many things to explore. What I would like to know is, how will exploration fill your playtime? What if you sit down and you are like, oh, I'm going to explore today, and I want to spend 3 hours playing. What would you do during those 3 hours?
Well, I would imagine you would be able to go look for areas you have not been in, fill out your star map for one. Try to find various asteroid fields you could possibly sell information to people or to the UE. Or you could look for uncharted jump points if you get lucky. Or you could possibly even just look for wreckages and all sorts of things. I think exploration and salvage are going to kind of go hand in hand a lot of case. Laser.
All right. I think what was mentioned as well was that even in known systems, there are parts of the system that aren't necessarily completely mapped out. So that even in a recognized and colonized system, there might be an asteroid or something interesting in some far-off portion of it that'll just show up for you to actually interact with.
They actually said that only 30% of the known galaxy was mapped out. The rest is up to us. And I'm sure they're going to consistently be adding to that.
Also, on top of running out of fuel, I think they mentioned... Well, there's the interstellar medium is hydrogen. So most of it's hydrogen. So you can coast home. I'm sure if you wanted to engage in combat, you would just sputter out and be unable to go as fast as you'd want to do to escape or to do any maneuvers. But
yeah, you wouldn't have afterburners or anything like that. But they did say there's going to be a space AAA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you probably don't get up to max speed or anything along those lines. Probably like a limp mode or something along those lines. Kibith.
Just with the comments on the bits and pieces about exploration as well, again, I feel that more and more influence is being taken, or more and more influence is being exerted from the fans of other series who have come to Star Citizen. Like, they're expecting something that's closer to what games they used to play, like the likes of Mass Effect, and they're voting on that kind of principle or suggesting on that kind of principle. In terms of exploration and stuff, I was reminded of the wormholes and the secret military base in Freelancer. And as much as I'm doing it again is taking something from EVE, which is not the same game, but in EVE they had exploration where you would find a location and you could essentially save that in your logbook and then sell it to someone else as like, hey, look, here's this location, it's got this stuff in it.
Well, that's definitely a thing they've said is going to be in the game. Selling coordinates to asteroid fields of certain mineral types or even derelicts of sorts. So, we're definitely going to be able to see that. Molasses, you had something to say.
I mean, I know they haven't mentioned or fleshed out on. I'm still wondering how exactly you're going to go about exploring, because it doesn't really seem smart to just pick a direction in space and just go that way. I'm wondering if there's going to be some kind of chart or map system. Again, like in EVE, when you would explore, you'd use probes, and your probes would do all the moving instead of you. It made a bit more sense that way. So I'm just wondering how exactly exploration is going to work, movement-wise.
I believe it's just you're gonna have to do it yourself and slug it out. We know that there are some probes on the exploration ship, but we don't know how that works because he doesn't really seem to like drone systems. So I don't expect there to be much other than you're just gonna have to get out there and uncover the map and remove the fog of war for yourself.
I know even video game space is big, so how long is it going to take to do this? Because I know some people are going to play this game for a long time, but some people, a lot of the old people playing this game have jobs. They work a lot of times. They can fly a $1,000 spaceship. They're not going to have the time to explore. They're going to be able to go 1% of the map in their entire time playing.
Well, early estimates were it's going to take approximately 15 minutes to cross from one system to another. And that would make it pretty big. All right, Phoenix, you had something to say about the trinary system?
It was more on the topic of that exploration. I guess one of the questions that they haven't really delved into answering yet is how dynamic is it going to be? I mean, usually in games in the past, it was kind of sort of single player, even if there was a multiplayer. The universe was really static. So I'm just wondering stuff like asteroid fields, will it drift? Will you be able to re-explore an explored asteroid field to find the new mineral deposits from drifting asteroids and selling updated charts?
That's actually a good point. I imagine there's going to be. Well, they've said that asteroid fields, like, they're not going to track each rock, only maybe like the big rocks, but they'll probably have like a percentage of how much materials are left of that asteroid field, and then maybe you do mine them out, or maybe you don't. We don't really know that yet.
I know Wingman said that nothing was ever going to run out in space, so it's just like, how much
Right.
area will there be, and how often will it update? Like, maybe in nebulas there'll be like jet streams that'll bring different gases into play at certain times. It'll be interesting to see how they tackle it.
Well, maybe since it's an MMO, maybe they'll like bring it out in waves. Like, you'll tap out something and then maybe they'll build it back up over time. Game aspects to make it more interesting, so you don't just tap all the resources, in the explored space.
This might be where some of the procedural stuff comes in.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. All right. Well, and then finally we have the 40 million goal, and it is currently in progress and has not been finally voted upon. And it's kind of interesting in the fact that it's a dead heat tie between Tevarin Ghost World and the Lost Human Colony, and they're tied at 35%. Now, we're getting back into what people don't really understand when they say something. Like a Ghost World, for example, is probably not going to be spooky in the sense of ghosts everywhere. It's probably just going to be an abandoned Tevarin world.
Well, I don't think anybody expects it to be actual ghosts. I hope not, at least.
Which we don't know a lot about. They have not given us a lot of information in the lore. We don't even know what they look like. And the Lost Human Colony might definitely be interesting. So, let's let Alex start this off. What do you think?
Now we're speaking my language, civilization, or X-civilization as it may be. So, I would go with the aliens. When in doubt, to go with aliens, because, well, humans are humans. They're always, in every system, there are always humans, and we know where we're going with them. But aliens, well, they give special color to a universe. So if we get the ruins of the Star Citizen civilization to dig through at our leisure, then we may get a lot of knowledge about the setting, just the world that Robert and his merry men have created. I'd like to see that. Lost colonies, well, I'm sure there will be plenty of those. I want aliens up front as the main dish.
Well, you'll definitely get your aliens. Tevarin aren't going to be so alien to the UE because Tevarins are actually integrated into UE. They were completely taken out, and they went all Japanese and sacrificed everything, and the UE basically put them into line, and now they're not really all that important. They're there, but they don't have a lot of prominence. As far as the Lost Human Colony, I think that actually brings up some interesting points. So let's say that you discover this Lost Human Colony, right? And the UE finds out about it. They're probably going to be pretty eager to bring them back into the fold. I'm wondering if game elements will reflect that. Like, are there going to be diplomatic talks, or are they just going to come in with the military and try to fold them back in? From what we do know, the political structure and current politics in in Star Citizen in 2944, the UE is actually very apologetic for transgressions that have happened. In the recent past, the UE was basically they had done recent transgressions that had caused a lot of problems. The Messer era, and they had they were trying to fix it politically because they pissed everybody off. So, Phoenix, what do you have to say about this?
One of the things that hasn't come up very recently is that Star Citizen is based partly on the Roman Empire. So, I guess I don't really know where I was going with this. But I think there was a historic example for what the Tevarin were, where like a culture was defeated by the Rome and absorbed.
Well,
I can't forget what it was. Yeah.
Historically, that's what Rome did with a lot of cultures, including the Celts. All the Gauls, they absorbed them into them, and very, very. I mean, they ruled 2/3 of the known world at the time. So, yeah, the UE seems to be doing much the same. Alex.
Well, the reason I'm so enthusiastic about the idea of digging through another civilization's ruins is because, well, it's twofold. First of all, that race may be subjugated by the human empire, and the humans of Star Citizen are familiar with them, but the players are not. So, for a player, it will be exciting either way. And second reason, it will be discovering something that you may not see just by seeing the subjugated people. You may not see it otherwise. Their secrets, their history, the remnants of their heyday, so to speak. So, like I said, Star Citizen at its best, possibly.
Well, we know you like aliens. All right, so moving on. Our next topic, we're going to talk about the current funding. Right now, we're at $37.7 million, and we don't currently have an end in sight as far as the money doesn't seem to slow down. It comes in various ways through pledges. They sell mouse pads, these giant Goliath mouse pads. They sell patches. They sell hoodies. What do you guys want to see as far as supplementary income to push it up?
I'll just make a comment on the money side, and I mean, you can only throw so much money at something before it's a matter of just having to wait. And I wonder if we'll ever actually reach that point, because 37 million is a shitload of money. I mean, at some point, they're just not going to be able to hire any more people to make this game be released any faster. It's just going to be eventually a point of just wait and give it time.
Well, one of the current problems that a lot of people are getting bored, irritated with, is we're not getting a lot of content updates. And there's a reason for that. One, there was a holiday. Austin just had to move recently, and that takes a while to get everybody up to speed. They hired a bunch of people, a lot of people. Now that they have the room in Austin, they hired like 10 new people, and all the other offices are constantly hiring. And it takes time to get these people acclimated and caught up to speed, and be ready to, do their job. Because you got to take the time to train them. You got to take the time to get them all on the same page. And they recently had a large summit. Between all, that's why we didn't actually get a Wingman's Hangar, because of the summit meeting. And so hopefully everybody's on the same page and everybody's going to start cranking out.
Right. I think that's a good point. I mean, as big as this has gotten, they still haven't quite gotten to their full developer complement, and they're just now really getting up to speed.
Yeah, a while ago, Chris Roberts said it was going to be something like 150 people at the end he was seeing. It might go bigger than that, because I think this is getting bigger than he expected it to. I don't think he was expecting 40 million when he planned to have 2 million people, or 2 million just for his
Even if they do reach like an imaginary goal, quote unquote, for hiring or whatever, they still have operations to pay for. There's still website costs money, the servers will cost money. So even if you're paying into it, it's not going to just go into somebody's yacht fund.
Or at least we hope it doesn't.
And just in general, I think that these concerns about scope of the game versus just polishing things to a higher degree, I get the feeling that Chris Roberts does have a good handle on those issues, on where this can go. He's got experience with it as well. So I'm not too worried about that. However, I do think that they're going to run out of things that I can buy saying I actually want them. Physical goods that I would actually want to have. Okay, Alex.
Yeah, so about the goods, I think a good idea might be just plastic ship models, like collectible Gundams, carriers in a bottle. And also, it could be... Star Citizen has very distinct brands, ship brands with their own personality. They could just pull this gig further, so to speak, and make brand keychains, brand caps, something that can show brand loyalty to the fans. I'm sure they would sell. This kind of stuff always sells. But mostly plastic stuff that isn't Gundams.
The hoodie released for the Drake Enterprises, that sold a lot. So we are seeing that stuff selling.
Yes, exactly. Let people show faction pride. Gamers love that kind of stuff.
All right. One thing somebody brought up to me I wanted to bring up was, as far as the supplementary income goes, I wonder, and they wondered too, are they including the subscriber income? Because that would explain why there's just a consistent amount of money incoming. Granted, the alpha slots are disappearing for the pledges, but I'm wondering, do they do it in one big sum, or are they spreading it out whenever it's charged? I think that might be a pretty interesting metric if they let us know about it.
Right, I'm not sure how much of the subscribers are month to month or paying a year in advance, and that would change things.
I mean, it would change everything as far as how we see the money come in. I know there are Imperators. I know a couple of people who have done Imperator, and they've already paid up their year in advance. But
site recently, after a short beta test, they rolled out the features where everyone can make their own organizations and fill out their histories and flavor about them, start collecting members. And this has been in demand for a long time because people were actually already forming organizations, even without having any official support for it. And this isn't the end either. So, moving on to the first section of this topic, we have the Kong organization is officially up, 116 members strong.
1,600.
We don't want to be that big. Anyone have any comments on this? What do we have? Alex.
I love the art.
Oh, yes. Alex Wolf has actually made our current banner and has contributed greatly to art in general in Kong. We may actually be getting a new banner at some point. Isn't that right, Alex?
Yes, it's in the works, but what I was mostly talking about was the lovely logo that isn't made by me.
Tip it.
Well, it was inspired by you.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exactly didn't make it at all. I mean, I remember we had, something like over 20 different beta prototypes of that logo before we finally settled on one.
So we tried way too hard on that.
It spanned 4 days of trying to come up with a logo.
So
what I was going to say is, I was amused by the Kong event generally has about 20 to 40 regulars that are on at least 3 or 4 times a week. And all of the people who don't lurk the event have suddenly started coming back out of the woodwork again, and we're just soaring again. I'm like, where are all these people coming from? I haven't seen them for years.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork or joining up. We'll see how things pan out from here on. So as far as the features of this organization drop, as we've mentioned, we've got banners and logos that everyone can make, and we've spent a fair bit of work on those ourselves. And there's these ranks and roles. Phoenix.
Just a bit about on the banner and logos, we were talking about how there's so many different iterations. I just hope in the future on our in-game endeavors that it's such a collaborative process. It was a good feel for the direction of working as a team rather than other places where somebody would make a decision and everybody abides by it.
And then a bunch of people get mad.
Yeah, it's actually been a good test of a lot of our internal organization and how we do collective decision making. It's turning out okay so far, I think. So we've got these ranks and roles, and all the organizations have to decide how they want to organize that internally. And eventually there might be more control over how many ranks and roles there are and what they do, but that'll be with later features. And we also got a new chat, the new chat client replacing the chat role with XMPP support. For those who may be familiar, this is a continuation of what used to be called Jabber, and you can use all kinds of third-party clients to connect to that. So that's very interesting about a bit of openness. This is an open source standard that anyone can work on and connect to. Alex.
Well, also talking about the outside of things aside, I'm not familiar with multiplayer games recently. Is this normal to have such a robust organization infrastructure for a game that's not even in alpha yet?
Well, I might have limited perspective, but it's really my perspective that it's not normal. This is very unusual to have this level of involvement and support so soon. Phoenix.
I'm a big fan of Halo, and Bungie has always had a really good community on their stuff. But even their organization system isn't this robust. Like, this is unprecedented as far as I've seen.
It really is, actually. I've played a lot of MMOs, a lot of games, been part of a lot of communities, and I've never really seen this level of involvement, especially this early. They're getting these people hyped up, letting them create their, little companies, their PMCs, and they're giving them all the tools to stay connected and to get hyped for the game, and we don't even have a game yet. I think it's a good idea. It keeps the community interested. It gives them something to chew on in the interim while they're actually waiting for actual gameplay. So, Laser, you had something to say?
I think the interesting thing about this is that there are different groups working in their own little pods that Chris has mentioned, so that just because one group is working on planet-side combat, dogfighting module, and other aspects of the game doesn't mean that the group working on the web end and the web backend as well for organizations has to twiddle their thumbs the entire time so that, we can deliver this while we're still working on this other aspect of the game.
I mean, that's actually a good point. One of the things that I've iterated before is that SIG is doing something interesting in the sense they have multiple studios practically working on different programs, different games at the same time. It's almost like multiple games are being developed around this one massive umbrella project that Chris Roberts is bringing together. And we get to see content coming constantly. We're not waiting for just one studio to show something. We have Austin doing a lot of the developer hangar stuff. We have LA working on the dogfighting. The back end's being worked on up in Canada. And of course, we have Aaron's team in Britain working on the Squadron 42. So it's really interesting to see all these different threads coming together, and hopefully they'll make something that makes a lot of sense.
It really is interesting, and looking at who gets kudos for this organization stuff, we really should give a shout out to Turbulent here. They have done an excellent job with this so far, and there's more to come.
Yeah, I was in the early testing, and I'm going to be honest with you. They didn't fix a lot, but when they had to fix something, they were very on task, and they were quick to listen to any feedback we had to give them. And I thought that was a really good example of how you work with your community. And it was refreshing seeing a company that actually cared about what they were working on and take such quick feedback. One thing we had recently was the banner. The banner and the logo, when you put it over, it wasn't the banner was converting any file format to a JPEG, which doesn't support transparency. Well, they fixed it to where the banner just stays as a PNG file and has an alpha channel for transparency, and they got rid of that within days of it coming out because it pissed people off.
And attention to detail really is a good sign. Well, so as we've mentioned, there will be more coming. There's currently, for instance, private chat channels for different organizations and levels of organization, but that will be happening with forums as well. We're going to have private forums dedicated just to organization members that will be moderated by the members. So that's going to be an interesting update. Blogs that work as just a way for groups to post internal news, like putting out your own comm links, kind of like RSI has been doing on their site.
One quick note about what Boojum's talking about is I don't believe there's ever been a company that's giving you your own internal forum for your just group. Like Boojum said, we are basically going to be responsible for, each group's going to be responsible for their own forum. And it's amazing that they're giving us that much latitude, that much bandwidth, and that much effort for a game that doesn't even exist yet. But go ahead, Boojum.
So yeah, in general, there's good stuff coming, and I don't know if we should say a lot about who's ever done this before or not done this before, but it's really kind of exciting what we're getting. For instance, there have been some features from Bungie that's allowed groups to have forums. I understand, but there's even more organization stuff going on as well. There's going to be the org charts where you can do internal subdivisions and roles, and I think especially the big groups need that coming up soon, because once you get over, I don't know, maybe 100 people, you really can't function as one group. You need to kind of subdivide at least by task. So it'll be really good to have that and see the features. We've seen some images of it, and it looks exciting how they're going to allow people to form their own internal units that can work together. The fleet view, where you can see ships that are part of your organization. I'm sure this will tie into shared assets, as well as what assets are part of which subgroup in the organization. Calendars, where you can schedule events and meetings, all of these features that big groups and guilds would tend to want. I think they've really done a good job either learning from past experience or taking feedback, and including all of the features that a big group would really want, and small ones as well. I mean, it encompasses all the things that they would need. Even going as far as supporting votes that are officially supported over various decisions. It might just extend to, polls. It might not be anything more than that, but it's nice to have it integrated. If we don't have anything more to say about organizations, our next topic is the recent Hangar Patch number 10, which, among many things, introduced the Cutlass. So we've been waiting for that one for a while, but it looks pretty good, I think. I don't own one personally. Does anyone here have something to say about it?
Yeah, I got one. There you go.
What do you think?
Nothing on it works. Like, there's no animations or anything. The cockpit's a bit wonky, but I think that's because it's right now the cockpit seats are offset to the side. But I think that's just so that you can get to them. I think once you're in and ready to go, they slide sideways, and you can tell because some of the monitors are not aligned with the chair properly. I think it's because it's meant to be shifted sideways. But other than that, it's really nice on the inside. It's not really dirty that we all expected Drake ships to be. It's a little more.
While I don't have one, I have seen lots of screenshots and videos of them. I love the kind of Eastern Bloc Russian, just utilitarian look to it, and I think they're going to actually add to that, make it even dirtier, and exposed pipes and shit like that.
Well, yeah, it looks like the inside of like a C-130 or something, like an aircraft or something. It's got the restraining straps on things, little cargo compartments have straps instead of high-tech fancy sliding doors. It's very I guess old-timey looking instead of just dirty.
Yeah, it doesn't have any kind of elegance at all to it. It's just has this utilitarian. It just does what it does, and some of the textures are really dirty. Obviously, they're not done, but
and
that toilet looks like I wouldn't want to go anywhere near it. It's a stall that's been sitting there for 20 years, never been cleaned. It's really kind of nasty. And as you mentioned, the animations are very minimal on it. They're not done.
No, there's none
yet. Oh, doesn't the back end open?
No, not a single part of it moves.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Laser, you had something to say?
I've seen plenty of videos and pictures, but now that we're actually discussing it, it makes it sound like a Russian submarine in space where, this panel, this wiring, this tubing, this piping isn't hidden behind a panel and you have to remove. It's it's exposed, easy access. Why even put a panel there to begin with?
That's absolutely what I wanted to see out of Drake. I want to see all Drake ships like this. Just this dirty, barely functional, but it works, and it works solid. It's looks like it's going to last for 20 years. Like my 325A looks pretty and all, but it looks like it wouldn't survive much of a beating, whereas the Cutlass looks like it can rough and tumble, and you could replace parts on it forever. Bill, you had something to say?
Yeah, it's nice that it's finally in game, and I do have one. And, you know, it doesn't have all the nice things that the other ships have, but I finally have something in my hangar, and I can actually go inside of it and look it around. One of the interesting things that one of my friends brought up actually was how many people you could possibly fit in it, because I know there is the second seat, and that there's also the turret chair that goes up. But you know, since it is also equipped for boarding, do we know how many people we could actually fit into one ship, and if we could support having multiple people in a single ship like that?
No, we don't know that yet. There was some early ideas that you couldn't, unless you had a seat for everybody, you couldn't go into a jump point. But we do know that you could at least do a crew of 3. You know, a pilot, co-pilot, and or they call it like the radar information officer, the RIO, and then in the turret chair. So yeah, we don't know that quite yet. Alex, you had something to say about the Cutlass.
I don't own the Cutlass, and my PC can't run the Hangar module anyway. But just from looking at the videos, that those seats had better slide to the center, because it gives me the lazy eye just from looking at the
Yeah,
at the
I'm pretty
canopy
sure it
on the
does.
inside.
Like, 'cause the monitors look like they should be to the side as well.
They do slide to the center. They're merely off to the left so that you can actually get into the seats, because otherwise it would be too small for you actually to get into the seats. And there's also a rail on the floor where you can see where they shift.
It is a
There's
very
hope there.
simplistic and utility feel to that whole just slide over rather than spinning around nicely, or, you know, having actual room in the cockpit. I really like that. All right, so enough about the Cutlass. We also got some other stuff in the hangar patch number 10. We got more sea life for the tank, including jellyfish, which are really cool. For like $1, you get a lot of them. You can get a little crab, and there's a couple other fish. So we actually have some more fish for those of you who like them. We do have someone in here that's actually interested in fish, but I don't know if he wants to say anything about them. Kibbit, go ahead.
Okay, so hands up. And how much have you spent on nothing but fish?
I don't think I've actually spent real money on it.
$4. $4. Well, they give us extra money to do it.
Right.
They give us like $5, I think, or 5,000 credits.
Yeah, I think I spent my leftover credits on fish.
I'm still saving up for the hardware table, the table to
Oh, the
work on and
workbench?
stuff. Yeah, the workbench. That's what.
Yeah, I bought the workbench a while back.
Yep,
I never
I'm just
loved
waiting
those
till
fish.
it actually becomes usable.
Right.
But the fish look really good. I mean, they redid them, they shrunk them down so everything fits in there, and it looks like they're thinking ahead now, rather than just throwing things in there. Because the original fish tank wasn't that big, and they intend to spread these fish throughout the known galaxy, and got to collect them all, and that'll probably create massive markets. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, there's already people talking about making that one of their major in-game goals is to collect all the fish.
So that means there's probably money in selling fish. The fish empire will be massive.
We got to be careful, guys. Don't want the UEE breaking up your black market fish selling.
No, unfortunately, we can't make fish fight other fish. At least yet. We'll have to see. All right, so moving on. We also got some holiday content, and yes, this is a little old, but we haven't had a cast for a while. They gave us a really nice wreath with some lights in the hangar, but I think it was cool. It was nice and classy, and they didn't force us to pay for it, which was really cool. They also gave us some new posters, some new guns in the Voyager Direct store, as well as they gave us the target range with the weapon mount. And I thought that was cool that they actually gave it to us and didn't force us to buy it like they did with the buggy and such. So you can actually test all your guns in your target range. Granted, they did say that they were going to fix up the range and change it around a little, but we are keeping it. So I'm very excited about that because you can test your guns, you know, in a neutral environment rather than trying to do it in a dogfighting module. Granted, we know that there's going to be AI to deal with as well, so maybe we can make dumb AI, and who knows? We'll have to see. We got so much going on. All right. Next topic, we know that there's going to be a Star Citizen specific HOTAS joystick setup. And during the last live stream, Chris Roberts spoke about how they would love to partner with a joystick manufacturer and set up something. And not too long ago, they had a poll. And the poll had some surprising results, I think at least. 31,695 total votes were in, and 45% of those people intend to use a HOTAS. That's a joystick and a throttle, sometimes with pedals. 48% of those people already had a joystick and a HOTAS. Now, that's pretty amazing. That's a lot of people. And what you're going to see is they were trying to figure out if they want to make a specific one for Star Citizen or one that just works with Star Citizen. I think that's really cool, and if it's good, I'll pick it up. Phoenix, you had something to say about this.
I really hope that they don't partner with Razer.
I think we all hope they don't partner with Razer. Razer wasn't actually on the list for the poll.
I think that was like, do you already have a joystick from that manufacturer though? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it was on the list, but it wasn't one of the ones that they asked if should we partner with them. It was like the usual suspects, like Cytec, Thrustmaster, those companies.
CH.
Yeah, CH. That's the other big one. Though, if they make a CH one, nobody will be able to afford it. Because it'll be so expensive.
And it'll be really
probably
boring
be
looking.
awesome, but it'll probably be really, really expensive. I think the best way to get it to where it's actually affordable would be like Cytec, because they're the only ones that make affordable joysticks that work decently. And a lot of people have trouble with them, especially the X52, but their higher end ones are really good quality, good build quality, and they tend to last. Kipeth, you had something to say about the HOTAS?
I was surprised somewhat. I mean, by the manufacturers that were listed. I know Razer have actually pursued getting joysticks made for these people as a sort of advertising deal, as they did with PGI before. They actually went out to PGI and said, hey, we can do an advertising deal, And the whole concept of going with a HOTAS over anything else is, I think it's just immersion. People want that whole immersion feel from it. But it was nice to see that they've gone after companies that are well known for making good joysticks.
Well, you never know. Star Citizen might be responsible for revitalizing the joystick market single-handedly, because we are seeing a lot of space sim games coming down the pipeline through Kickstarter and whatnot, because no matter what happens, Star Citizen has opened up a can of worms. Obviously, there's people interested, despite what EA and any other of the big companies has said. The people have made their voices heard, and $37.7 million says otherwise. So, Phoenix, you had something to say?
I think it coincides nicely with the timeline for the Oculus Rift as far as immersion goes, because the HOTAS setup would be really nice for that. And a good thing to take note of is that Eve game spinoff they did, the Valkyrie. Supposedly that's the best Oculus Rift game out there. So
Yeah, I think it was
hopefully
developed specifically for Oculus Rift.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It was just set up for it.
So hopefully there'll be just a market of games that you can play in Oculus Rift with a HOTAS coming out, just because this technology is here and just because Star Citizen has achieved such great success so far.
Well, either way, I'm excited, and we're just going to have to see what comes of this. So moving on, we had some information a little while ago from Chris Roberts. He did a pretty big info dump about various systems within Star Citizen. The links are going to be in the note. I'm not going to go over them word for word because there's just too much here. But the first part, he does talks about the physics and the flight model. He talked about how he's definitely going to have a full-fledged physics system. Now, we don't know if he's using something commercial or if it's something developed for himself, or even if it's Crytek's physics model, because they actually have one.
Hey, he actually says that it's the Crytek physics model.
Oh, okay, so it is. Is it a modified version? Because I didn't think it was that fully featured, like
Just to be
Hack or
absolutely
whatever.
clear, the whole game runs on Cryphysics, which is a fully fledged physics system on par with other physics systems like Physics and Havoc, directly from the notes.
I stand corrected then. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. And he also talked about how he implemented some years ago this concept of space dust, because physics are tough to notice in space because you have no way of figuring out your heading. And he'll probably implement this in Star Citizen too. Basically, space dust is these little particles that show you your heading. So if you're moving sideways, forward, backwards, or whatever, you'll see the dust and you'll see these little trails. Kibith, you had something to say about
Just
the
reminding,
physics.
you said, well, in terms of physics, we're just going to have to wait and see on that. He does make comments that essentially the computer is translating what you're pushing to the thrusters, because the thrusters have 32, 64 thrusters on them, and controlling those manually with a keyboard by yourself is going to be damn near impossible. But I do remember
he did say something. Well, there's two things actually. There's the IFCS, which is the Intelligent Flight Control System. Now that's supposed to make it easier to control these to where it translates all your movements into something you can actually make sense of. Even modern jets and stuff have this. But he also said there's going to be a manual mode for people who want to do advanced flight maneuvers. And this advanced flight maneuvers, he did mention, not in this, I don't believe, but previously he mentioned along the lines of you're going to be able to set up macros into your flight computer and be able to, like, for various maneuvers and such. I think that's really exciting.
So basically being able to set up custom configurations for your flight computer.
Yeah, like to do some split S turn, some crazy move like a split S turn followed by some like super loop, and then maybe crazy evasive maneuvers, anything like that.
But he makes a comment on being lost in space during dogfights. I remember playing on Xbox 360 a space fighter. I can't remember the name of now, but it solved the whole concept of being lost when you're in dogfighting by simply putting you quite close to the fight, and you were basically using the other ships as your gauge of where you are.
Well, as he details, one of the problems was the radar is not fully implemented yet, and without a working radar, it's really difficult to just go by sight. A lot of people think sight's really important in these kind of games, and it can be, don't get me wrong. But if it's stealth ship, for example, then yes, sight is your only hope. But if you're going to be relying on your targeting instruments, you're going to be relying on your radar a lot, because beyond a certain distance, you don't see much. You really don't. And these ships are going to disappear very fast, even the big ones, unless they're like really big. Like the fighters, you're not going to be able to see from far away at all.
Right.
So
we can even see a preview of that, and the people that have hacked together that that little secret sandbox you have to access by changing some game files. It's really hard to track ships visually.
It is, and you're going to be relying on your targeting systems and radar systems, and that's why he had to use that in the dogfighting alpha. Well, the demonstration they did on the live stream, because he went to third person. A lot of people complained, is like, why are you going to third person? But he didn't have his tracking at all. It's just not implemented yet, so it'd be impossible to find anything just using your eyes. Well, it's not impossible, but it would make it incredibly difficult. Let's put it that way. All right, so the next part of this was he's talking about the control schemes. And one of the words he used I really liked, he wants to be input agnostic. In other words, he does not want to be biased for any one control scheme. He wants to make it to where somebody can pick up a gamepad, mouse and keyboard, HOTAS setup, anything like that, be able to fly equally well. Depending, it's more along your preference, what's better for you. Now, obviously, due to the disparity between these control schemes, you're going to have difference in skill. Some are going to be better for others at certain things. What we do know, though, that the mouse is currently just for looking around, and it tracks your Class 2 turrets. And that's kind of a big deal, because if your mouse is not used for flying as of current, we'll get into this a little bit, it's going to make maneuvers with the mouse really difficult because you're only going to have digital. Kipeth, you had something to say.
The difference between the controller and the keyboard and sheer volume and the volume of keys that you have at your disposal, you can have a lot more macros set up on a keyboard. So it's going to put the controller players at a bit of a disadvantage. But when it comes down to the actual controlling of the craft, there isn't too much in the way of difference. It's more for utility commands that they're going to lose out.
Well, the big deal, controllers actually are not the biggest problem that controllers have is the fact that they don't have a lot of buttons. But you can fix that with hotkeys on, like, the control pad. You see a lot of console-oriented games with control pads. They'll have nested menus where you could set, like up and X or left and square or something. We'll send like a make or a hotkey. But they do use analog controls, which is a good thing. It gives you a lot of fine control. Currently, the mouse and keyboard setup only uses digital inputs. That's WASD, Q, and E. And that is not an ideal situation. I don't believe so. I think it's an inferior way of doing something. Whether they keep that or not remains to be seen. I don't think they will, though.
And for you at home, whenever Kayla says macros, he means macros.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. All right, moving on. He also talks about first versus third person. And he's very clear in what he intends for each to be. Third is for pretty, for looking at something, for examining the vistas, whereas first person is for when you want to get down to business. Another interesting thing he said, that ships are not add-on vehicles like in Battlefield. He wants ships to be the focus of the game, so third person is not really going to be viable as a combat thing. So you're not going to be able to use it. Maybe there'll be a transition time. There could be lots of different ways to do it. Here at Kongkast, we're very sensitive of third person versus first person. So anybody have anything they want to say about that?
Just in general, talking about his exact statements that there will be no tactical advantage in combat. That's his intention, and we will look at it going forward. And if there's any issues in balancing, we will give him feedback. I'm sure that he will listen to it. For instance, one thing that people have expressed concerns about is that you could hide behind an asteroid and then peek around it with third person. If that's a problem, I'm sure that they'll find some way to work on that.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's going to be limits to what you could do, though, with the existing technology. I think the best way to concede it would be like a timer between going first and third, like not an instant thing. That way you couldn't just instantly make use of that tactical information that you've gained. But, Kipeth, you had something to say about this.
What I took from the post that he had was that when you're in third, you won't get any of the HUD. You won't get a HUD put over the top. You won't get any in combat or information that would benefit you in combat. It'll be hard to see things that aren't just there for being pretty. If you want to look at some pretty asteroids or your ship while you're doing some macro or a pretty asteroid or pretty view, third person's going to work perfect. But when you're in combat, you need this data on your screen, and you won't see it in third person.
Well, the biggest problem is you're not going to have a HUD. That's been confirmed several times. And without a HUD, as I said earlier, you need to have your targeting information. I mean, your eyes are very limited use. They do help, and they will help against stealth ships, but not against anything else. You're just not going to be able to see the ships.
Yeah, and I think that will just be the nail in the coffin for third-person view in combat.
Pretty much. All right. Alex, what did you have to say about this particular subject?
I'm really glad that we have a clear statement from the man himself about the first and third person, because, well, this is the make or break for a lot of people. If third person gives any kind of tactical advantage, then it will be the preferred mode, and first person will become the inferior one. Making cockpits is a waste of time, and it happened to a lot of games. I won't even go there at length. At the same time, people want to see their stuff. They want to see their precious ships. The Star Citizen design is very lovely, and I'm sure everyone wants to admire their ships, especially if there's a paint job, custom decals, and whatnot. They want to take screenshots on lovely skyboxes with heptable quasars or whatever. And yeah, we need both, but if you make third person at all usable in combat, then you're just wasting time putting in the first person mode. Let's hope that position will not change and first person will be for combat forever. Otherwise, it won't be the game that is advertised right now.
Let's be very clear. While Chris did make or help make Freelancer, he did not like the third person, and he is not making Freelancer 2. As far as the third person goes, he wants first person. He wants that immersion. He wants it to be you're sitting in your ship. That's why he's making it so interesting views of the cockpits, because he knows you're going to be staring at them a lot. All right, so finally we have the TNGS, or the Next Great Starship. Now this was a different way of doing stuff. Rather than spend money that he would normally have to spend and already go through his strained resources of making another ship, he apparently had the brainchild of having a contest wherein a bunch of teams of 3 will compete to make the next starship that's going to be included in Star Citizen. And it's an interesting competition. It's modeled after like the reality shows, wherein they use so many episodes to pare down the teams. As they pared it down to 24 teams, 24 semi-finalists. And each of the first 3 episodes, they're going to pick 5 of those 8 teams, because they break them down to 8 per episode. And 5 of those will go on, and then 3 will fail out by the judges. And the judges, 9 wildcard votes, and then community is going to pick one of those to go through, and then the actual contest will start with 16 finalists, and they're going to compete to make the show over so many weeks with help from the judges. Pretty much Kong has a favorite. I think everybody seems to like it. It's the Sakura-san rotary barrel one. There's a link in the notes of the actual gun. It's the most interesting by far, and it seems to have the most work. And it was only done by one guy, which is really impressive. But I'm not sure how he's going to get more than one done, or get a ship done all by himself. It's going to be a lot of work, because there's so much work that goes into these ships.
Wait, what are you referring to, Kalis, with the Sakura-san rotary barrel? I thought they were all supposed to be that.
Yes, but I wasn't clear enough. There's a specific one that was, he patterned it after the flower, the Sakura, and he, it has the barrels that rotate and they pull back. They each have a...
Right, the team is Skyguard Fabrications.
Okay,
thank you. That's what I needed. So, it's really interesting how they're doing this as a TV show, and this is actually going to take the place on Fridays, and they're moving Wingman's Hangar to Wednesday at noon. So they're spreading out their content, so they're not all backloading all their content on Friday, which probably makes them go home late pretty much every Friday, I'd imagine. What they're competing to do is they're going to make a mercenary gunship, which was voted on by the community, and these 16 teams will compete against it with help from the judges. Laser, you had something to say about it.
Mercenary gunship. What an original choice.
Yeah, I still can't believe that guy picked.
Well, this is more of that miscommunication or lack of communication. We don't really know what a mercenary gunship. We can speculate. Like, I figure it's 1 or 2 to 3 people in a ship with a lot of front-loaded ballistic weaponry, but maybe the size of like Freelancer, but we don't really know. They don't really tell us anything about it. We don't have specs or anything like that. So everybody's voting on something that just sounds cool rather than making any informed decision. So, Phoenix, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't even really understand what role a mercenary, or not a mercenary gunship, but just a gunship in general. Because modern day gunships are generally like ground attack infantry support craft, and it's like,
Well,
how
you
is
have
that?
to apply it to space. It's the best way you can do it.
But I have a hard time doing that because it's like, well, if it's just something that's got lots of guns, it seems like it overlaps in a lot of ways with the Gladiator.
No,
Like, what's the difference between
that's a missile boat.
Yeah.
A gunship would be like a heavy fighter, if I had to guess. The Gladiator does not have a lot of guns. It is heavy on the missiles. That is its role.
Taking a note from Freelancer's balance methods, the gunships in that were a lot of guns and medium to light armor. They were more for shooting down bombers and generally doing high damage to something at a fair distance. They were very much support ships. You needed something else with high armor to take the brunt.
So that might very well be the way. But that we'll just have to see. Well, maybe they'll release more information next week, or at least week 4 they'll begin. Who knows? We don't know yet, so we'll just have to wait and see. All right, and finally, just want to mention that the new jump point was released, and they showed off the up-resed and partially PBR'd, the physically based rendering sites and pictures. If you're a subscriber, you should definitely check it out because it's really good looking. And there's some also information about interviews with Foundry 42, and they talk a little bit about mining and a mining mission. It's pretty good stuff. I highly recommend it. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Alex, go ahead.
Well, it's a bit late, but Happy New Year to all the listeners of Kongkast. Have a good one.
Well, thank you for listening to us here at Kongkast, and this will be the end of this episode. Thank you. Have a good night.
www.